Should the United States continue supporting Ukraine in the world where the efforts of the new axis of evil led by China are breaking out more and more conflicts?
In the world where more and more places appear where the United States should spend its forces and its resources simultaneously.
Maybe the West and Americans have already given quite enough funds for this war.
And if there is no results, should the entire campaign be cancelled?
Radical Republicans, supporters of the ex-president Trump, use such kind of rhetoric. They are trying to slow down the adoption of large aid package for Ukraine, which was introduced by the President Joe Biden.
Believe us, dear friends, Bogdan and I are not trying to teach you Americans how
Europeans, Americans, Australians, British people.
Yeah, our allies, our Western allies. We are not trying to teach you how to spend your money and what to spend your money on. But let us consider a few ideas which, in our opinion, can be useful for both American voters and politicians, European voters and politicians, and all voters and politicians all around the world who support us when making such, fateful decisions.
But before we do this, please subscribe to our channel. It's very useful for us. If you want to know some analytics from Ukraine about Russia-Ukraine war, and to look at all the situation from the inner Ukraine worldview.
Can't allow Vladimir Putin to prevail in Ukraine because I don't believe it would stop there, and it would probably encourage and empower China to perhaps make a move on Taiwan. We have these concerns. We're not going to abandon them, but we have a responsibility, a stewardship responsibility over the precious treasure of the American people, and we have to make sure that the White House is providing the people with some accountability for the dollars.
Said the newly elected Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, Mike Johnson, who belong to the wing of those who want to reduce support to Ukraine.
So, what's wrong with these words? Actually nothing. They are right. After all, it is really obvious that Russian aggression is a part of a big plan to destabilize and destroy the existing legal order in the world.
I think it's obvious to all people with clear mind in the world that China wants to destroy and become the leader and the hegemon. And that is, only the first act of a global war against Western leadership and Western civilization as it is.
Any victory of the Russian Federation in any form will become an invitation ticket to the dictators all around the world. It is sort of invitation, show your strength, be relentless, go and steadily toward your purpose, go toward your goal, destroy as many peoples as you can, as you need. And the main thing is that the soft and flexible Western democracies at some point will give up and will surrender their allies and run to negotiations and divide the world into, spheres of influence.
That is what Xi Jinping plan looks like, really. Where his small vessels, Russian, Iran, North Korea, Syria, Belarus, and so on, they play the role, some kind of snipers as if in a hunt.
And it is already being implemented in full swing. You can see this. China, through its proxies, is trying to overload the response system of the United States of America and its allies.
The evidence of this is the situation, for example, in Israel, attempts to foment war on the Balkans, and tensions between, for example, Venezuela and Guyana in Southern America.
And China is doing this, actually shaking the world before a possible meeting between Biden and Xi Jinping. And it is very important to know that at this very moment, radical Republicans are using the issue of helping Ukraine to attack Democrats and Biden.
We clearly understand that the biggest problem of Ukraine is that absolutely all presidents of Ukraine have tried to deceive the West many times over the past 30 years.
Yes, unfortunately, that is in words. We are friends and we ask for money, we ask for help. But in reality,
We
are
want to
trying...
get to the European Union
Yes, we
and
want
to
to
be
be
allied
one-
with the United States. We want to get to the NATO. Yep.
Yep. But in reality, we are trying to imitate reforms and continue to, continue to do the same things in the usual management style. And Zelensky is not an exception. He behaves the same way, unfortunately.
But the only and the biggest difference that he's doing, it in the conditions of a bloody war, in which Ukraine completely depends on the West and the USA, absolutely.
Of course, all these causes legitimate dissatisfaction in the Western establishment. However, it is important to note that the Ukrainian war is now at a critical point.
All the talk about the Ukraine have already won this war, which unfortunately were inspired by the President Zelensky and President Zelensky office in order to, preserve their own rating in inner Ukrainian politics, turned out to be empty talk.
The fact is that the political leadership of Ukraine and its media service, its information policy, instead of actually covering the hostilities and telling the truth, created excessive expectations in the form of counter-offensive PR campaign.
Both internally and externally, the Ukrainian authorities said that within a few weeks, Ukrainian troops would free Crimea and end the war victoriously, forcing Russian Federation to surrender.
And since spring, all conscious commentators have been talking about the utopian nature of such plans.
Back in the winter of 2023, Russia switched to a strategy of war of attrition. They launched its military complex, constantly conducts mobilization among the poorest strata of the population, attracting various slacks to the army for money, really for money, for big money for the Russian society, and who, however, fight and kills.
The Russian Federation increases the production of all possible weapons. It attracts help from its colleagues in the axis of evil, Iran and North Korea.
And, for example, receives from China, under the guise of free sales on AliExpress, any parts and technologies for productions of UAVs.
Unfortunately, the West and the United States, due to various reasons, did not have time to deliver even the promised amount of shells and weapons.
Plus, the constant fear of the Western countries of provoking the Russian Federation to some kind of greater escalation, did not allow to provide the armed force of Ukraine the ATACMS missiles in time before the start, of the offensive operations, which would be very helpful in breaking the giant fortifications of the Russian army on the Zaporizhia front.
As a result, the Ukrainian army has been conducting an offensive for several months in the full absence of superiority in anything, from manpower to weapons.
At the same time, the Russians, who perfectly see the indecision and passivity of Western authorities, are constantly trying to advance with increasing forces on the Eastern Front from Kharkiv to Donetsk region. They distract the Ukrainian army and take the initiative.
Yes, their trainings and the old equipment of Soviet models from Soviet times, restored after 10 years of standing in the open air, are of increasingly low quality. But this weapon kills, and there is a lot of it.
Now the situation is very similar to positional dead end on the front line. When it is necessary to use those trump cards in terms of high-tech weapons in order to finally turn the tide of the war in favor to Ukraine and to the Western allies of Ukraine.
And right at this very moment, even more slowdowns in aid issues begin.
Right in the moment when there is complete uncertainty as to whether aid to Ukraine will be extended at all.
Right at the moment when the Ukrainian command, which managed to do, almost impossible, to advance in the conditions of complete superiority of the enemy in the air and the missiles weapons, has to plan the next operations.
And right in this moment, the group of Republicans, for the sake of political history of confrontation with Democrat Party in USA, essentially stops all aid to Ukraine. Both and financial and military aid.
Yes, we fully understand and we are aware that Zelensky is really unpredictable person who has failed to fulfill his direct promises many times. Yes, we fully understand that the mistrust and fatigue that Western politicians have accumulated towards him.
But sometimes there are situations when you have to recall Franklin Roosevelt's approach that sounds like, he's a son of a bitch, but he's our son of a bitch.
Even if Zelensky himself raises many questions, the choice of the Ukrainian people does not raise any questions. We finally chose our friends for generations ahead, where the main friend is precisely the United States of America.
And the most important point, the time count literally goes to the months, not years, months, and maybe quickly weeks. If Washington can't figure out and continue aid, at least at the current level, then all the efforts spent before that will be in vain.
So all the hundreds of thousands of deaths of Ukrainians will be in vain.
And this all means that Russian Federation will soon restore its potential, go to the offensive and destroy Ukraine.
This means that the Russian army will go to the borders of NATO, and China will attack Taiwan, and Iran will attack Israel.
And North Korea will attack South Korea. The world will start to fall like dominoes. And soon the crisis, which could be solved now with a very, very small percentage of the American budget, a huge part of which would remain in America, in the United States of America itself, will turn into another world war. When an American soldier, just like in a Great War, World War II, will have to go across the different oceans and to die, in 10,000s in several wars at once. I want to ask you one question, madams and messieurs. Don't the Republicans think that it is a very unsuccessful strategy and for USA and for USA-ruled world and for all Western civilization?
The United States certainly has every right to demand the most detailed accounts and accountability of every United States taxpayer dollar spent. And it is absolutely right. And all normal Ukrainians only welcome the tough audit and pressure on Zelensky team.
But, however, audit should not be confused with aid suspension, which in our conditions can lead to a disaster.
Time is running out.
And the choice is yours, ladies and gentlemen, Americans and Europeans.
For now, the war is outside your homes, and there is someone who is fighting, someone who will stop it. However, things may change very soon.
And it is for sure only up to you to decide whether you and your societies and your governments and your countries are ready to pay the price that we, the Ukrainian people, are already paying for our recklessness.
And are you ready to plunge again into the world war like your grandfathers and grandmothers? It can and it should be stopped and turned away. That's all for today. Please write your comments right under this video.
And for sure, give us your like and subscribe to our channel if you want to get the objective information about Ukraine directly from Ukrainians.
Yes, if you want to know what Ukrainians think about what's going on in Ukraine, in Russia-Ukraine war, and in the world in general, let us be your Ukrainian insiders. Here we give you the top news, information, and insider news and insider information about Ukraine.
Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.